Good evening. My name is Mandy Albrecht. I'm this year's chair of the VIP Distinguished Speaker Series. The VIP Distinguished Speaker Series is one of the many programs put on by the Undergraduate Business Council for the Red McCombs School of Business. Today we are joined by Dean Platt, the Undergraduate Associate Dean of Red McCombs Business School, and Mr. Marty Thompson, President and CEO of Ghirardelli Chocolate Company. We begin tonight with an interview between Dean Platt and Mr. Thompson. Then we will open the floor to a Q&A from the audience. As a reminder, today's event will end promptly at 6:30. We would greatly appreciate it if you could refrain from leaving early or using any electronic devices. Marty Thompson is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Ghirardelli Chocolate Company and is responsible for Ghirardelli's day-to-day operations, as well as a company strategy and direction. Marty was appointed to this position in 2011. Marty has begun his Ghirardelli career in April of 2004 as Vice President and Head of Sales. In this role, he was responsible for 80% of company's revenue, which is more than doubled in his 7 years in that role. During his tenure as Ghirardelli's Head of Sales, Marty and his team built many customer facility capabilities, including trade marketing, customer supply chain, retail sales merchandising, and category management departments, and an establishment of food services sales organization. Prior to joining Ghirardelli, Marty held a variety of sales leadership positions at the Clorox Company and Procter & Gamble. Marty holds a Bachelor of Business Administration from the University of Texas at Austin. Marty and his wife of more than 20 years are parents to 2 children, and he is an avid golfer, runner, and reader. Please welcome Dean Platt and Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy, and thank you very much for being here. We very much appreciate it. And my first question for you is, you don't look like the CEO of a chocolate company. How do you stay so fit?
Chocolate is good for you.
Oh, okay. It's health food.
Exactly.
Okay. That sounds like the corporate line to me.
Exactly.
All right. Would you please tell us about your first job?
Okay, my first job. First of all, let me say I'm glad to be here and hook 'em horns to everybody. My first job, I carried golf clubs. I was a caddy, and I was employed. I guess I started around 7th grade, and we lived outside of Chicago at the time. And I would ride my bike to Glen Oak Country Club, about 5 or 6 miles each direction, and I would leave early in the morning and carry a loop or two for those of you who've caddied, and then come home in the evening. Yeah,
good exercise.
Also, good skills. I mean, I still can read a green and things like that. It got me started on the passion.
So it's true what they say about golf being kind of a key business skill, huh?
I don't golf with customers as much as I would like to, but I think I definitely take the team out and things like that. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. We often hear from people about being paper boys. So you were not a paper boy, just for the record.
I did not do paper route.
All right,
no.
Good. So what set you apart from your peers for you to get from being a golf caddy to a guy in Longhorn grad, guy in sales, and now CEO of a major company?
I think it's a good question. I work with super talented people, and the interesting thing about me being elevated to the CEO role was the people that I was peers with, I now became their boss. And I think if you were to say, why did that happen? First of all, I think the company that I was in was I had the profile. So meaning the company that I lead today takes its leaders from either sales or marketing. There are some companies that take their leaders from finance or operations or science or something like that, and the company that I'm leading was looking for a leader from sales or marketing, customer-facing kinds of leadership. So I had that profile. I think the second one was just a little bit about perspective, which is there are times when you're heading a function and your job is to deliver revenue for the company, you have to be great at it. You have to have specific know-how. You have to know how to lead. You have to know how to sell. You have to know how to design products, this and that. But there are times when you have to step out of your function and you have to take a broader perspective that is a company-wide perspective for your company actually to move forward. And I think I was able to demonstrate through years that I had that perspective. Okay. And I think also when somebody asks you if you want an opportunity like this, I think you also have to be ready to say yes. And so I think those 3 things were key.
And you've been promoted between companies and also within a company.
Yeah.
How does that differ?
it's probably more challenging to be promoted within a company because they know you and they have seen your work and things like that. And when I jumped from Procter & Gamble to Clorox, they knew me through interviews, through checking with references and things like that, but they didn't know me like they ultimately did. And so when you land someplace and then you show what you can do and people know how you work and things like that, that's really saying that you can get ahead in that environment that you're in.
That's right. Plus the added challenge of managing people that you've worked with.
Yeah. It's what's great about the team that we have at Ghirardelli is we all believe that we can be a great company, and we're all working in that direction. And we are a great company, but there are levels, and there are things that you do along the way, and we all have the same passion and energy. We're on the same page. And so while I was in the middle of it and now I'm leading it, it was a transition for sure, but it didn't feel like that big of a transition.
Yeah. When you look back in your history and think about the people who inspired you, who inspired you? Who do you admire the most?
If the question is just, in the world, I would say, or broadly, I would say my father. Mm-hmm. My dad. I'm one of 9 kids, and he and my mom raised 9 of us, put us through private schools. We all love each other. We all get along. Mm-hmm. He did an unbelievable job, and he and my mom were married for 60-something years. So, and my dad is my hero for sure. If you said, hey, find somebody in the business world that you believe is an inspiration, the person that I would say is the gentleman who runs the Disney company, Bob Iger, is my inspiration on that. And we do a fair amount of business with Disney, so I have met him several times and have served him a hot fudge sundae in one of our stores and different things like that. But what I think is inspirational about him is he started as a weatherman. He started broadcasting the weather, and he turns out that he's now running the biggest entertainment corporation in the world. And I don't know if sales is like forecasting the weather, but to go from one thing and then ultimately grow and learn and develop and get broader perspective and do it again, and broader perspective and do it again, and then end up in a position like I've been fortunate to do or he's done it, I think it just says something. Yeah. Now, he also has a phenomenal brand. It's Disney, and what he's done with the Disney brand, it was strong when he took it over in 2005, but he's nurtured it and he's built it, and we happen to have spent a lot of vacations at Disneyland, and they do a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. So I think on a business standpoint, it would be Bob Iger. He's amazing. He's one of those guys who's done it quietly, too, as opposed to his predecessor and others who are much more high profile. Exactly. Yeah. He's a good strategic leader. Yeah. And have you read Good to Great, the book? And that's kind of one of their takeaways from that book, right, is that often it's the quiet people who lead companies that persist over time. Exactly, level 5 leadership. Level 5 leadership, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's good. Biggest mistake, can I ask? I used to, when I was younger, think of all of these things as mistakes and tragic mistakes, and now I feel like these are all steps along the way. Yeah. And if I had one thing that I know now that I didn't know then is I would have put myself out there more aggressively earlier on. Mm-hmm. I was intimidated in different situations and maybe not sure that I knew what I really knew and things like that, and so I maybe held back. Mm-hmm. And knowing what I know now, I wouldn't hold back. And it's one of the things I talk to people about when I'm in situations or audiences like this. Everybody in this room has something to give. And when you're around a table, you're there to give. And you have to find the courage to get it out, contribute, because you have something that is going to benefit the table. That's why you're there. And so I had to learn that. And I wouldn't call it a mistake because I got it, but I wish I would have known it earlier, that's for sure. Yeah. I've never had to ask that question of somebody when his daughter was in the room before, that's a good one. One thing I would say, too, is we're a growth company. And when you're in a growth environment and with a growth company, you're going to make mistakes. Yeah. And the only real problem is if you don't look back and say, I learned this, I learned that, I won't do that again. So the thing that I have, the perspective that I have is if you make a mistake, you own it. And I have very open about this with my company, with my direct reports, everybody. I own that one. We could have done a better job. Here's what I learned. Let's move on. And I think if you can bring that perspective, then every experience is a valuable experience and not necessarily a mistake, maybe just something you might do different next time.
Well, that relates to what we were talking about earlier with your parent company and building credibility with them too. Maybe you could repeat that for the benefit of the others.
The Ghirardelli Chocolate Company is 163 years old. We're the oldest chocolate company in America, actually. And we were founded in 1852 in San Francisco. In 1998, we were purchased by Linton Sprungli. Linton Sprungli is almost as old as Ghirardelli and was founded in a little town outside of Zurich, Switzerland. They're the worldwide leader in premium chocolate. They have enormous know-how in premium chocolate. And they bought us because they wanted to build their footprint in the U.S. market. And we were talking about what's it like to work for Swiss management, what's it like to work for a foreign owner, and especially the group that we work for. They're super talented, they're excellent at what they do, and they want to, in order to work successfully in that environment, you have to be credible. And they don't give you credibility, you earn credibility. And the way you earn credibility is you come to an agreement. The Ghirardelli budget for 2015 is X revenue, X profit, X margin, etc. And they're relying on you to deliver those things because you're one of many companies and it all rolls up into one P&L. And so you have to deliver. And so, and when you do, that you earn credibility. And so I think, and it's trust. Credibility is another word for trust. And you want to work with people who trust you and who you can trust. And I think they leave us alone. We have a lot of freedom, but they want to know that they can trust you not only to deliver the P&L, but also to take care of the asset. And the primary asset is the brand. You will take and nurture and build your brand. And if you can do that and deliver the P&L, you got credibility, you got trust. And
you were talking about visibility for mistakes and challenges as well. Right?
Things happen. We're in the biggest chocolate market in the world is the United States, by far. And so it's dynamic, and we're growing. So things are going to happen. And what you do when things happen is you say, hey, things happened, and here's what it is. And I believe we should take this path, and this path. And on the way over here today, my daughter picked me up at the airport, and we were driving over, and I had to make a call to the guy that I work for. And it was one of these things. Hey, this is something's come up, and it's going to cost whatever it's going to cost, and here's the path we want to take. And I think early, candid conversations build trust.
Yeah, absolutely. How about your greatest accomplishment then?
I think I would answer two ways. I'm involved in the most exciting enterprise I've ever been involved in my career, and that's leading this chocolate company that is 163 years old, but also young, to new heights. And so I am proud every day at what we accomplish. For those of you who probably none of you know, because I haven't talked with you yet, but we're the fastest growing chocolate company in America. We're the only chocolate company in America that does baking chocolate that grew in 2014, and we're the only baking chocolate company that grew in 2013. So we have phenomenal momentum in the marketplace. At the same time, our brand is very strong. Harris Poll for 2015 came out earlier this week. I don't know if you track the Harris Poll, but they do a survey every year of 38,000 consumers, and they talk about 1,400 brands in 150 categories. One of the categories is premium chocolate. And for the fourth consecutive year, Ghirardelli Chocolate Company is America's favorite premium chocolate brand. So we have momentum in the market. We have momentum in the hearts and minds of our consumers with our brand. And so I'm really proud of that. And the people in our company who have made this happen are incredible. We have passionate brand ambassadors who believe and who make it happen every day. And so, proud of that.
Yeah.
The other way I would say is, I'm fortunate to be a father of two and married for 23 years, and my family is amazing, and that is a real accomplishment, I think. Today.
Absolutely, so. Yeah. And not easy, hard work.
No,
right?
It's hard work, exactly. Probably they would say the same about me.
Yeah, probably,
Dean.
No doubt. What will Ghirardelli need to do to thrive in the chocolate market, to stay at the top of the Harris poll?
I think it's a good question. I think about it all the time. Number one thing is people. People. It's a people business, and so we need the best talent in the world to want to be a part of our company and a part of our journey. Right. And so we have to create a compelling work proposition for people. It's about salary and bonus and the extrinsic things, but it's also about the intrinsic things. Join us. Help us get to number one. Help us on this mission. We can change the way the consumer experiences chocolate in the U.S. market. So people is number one. Number two is the brand. The reason that we can charge, the reason that we're a premium price company and can grow at the rate that we do with premium pricing is because people believe in the promise of the Ghirardelli brand. And we have to keep it strong. The third thing is we have to innovate. We have to create. And that's exciting. New products, new commercial ventures, just different things that will help to keep us visible with the consumer. So, yeah.
Good. Speaking of the brand and the Harris poll, it reminded me that you're actually competing with your parent company in a sense, right? They're in this market. They sell the Lindt product.
They do.
And it's a great product, and it's in the exact same niche. It's the premium chocolate area. How do you manage that? That seems like a tricky business.
Have you had a brother-sister relationship where you have argued all day long and things like that?
Yes.
No, it's a good question. So as a part of the Lindt and Sprungly group of companies, the chairman, who's Ernst Tanner, has extensive experience and strong beliefs that if we set these companies up, not as one company in the U.S. market, but as two companies, they will work harder to compete, and we won't be prioritizing this brand versus that brand or this production line versus that production line. We'll be talking about how to make Ghirardelli great, how to make Lindt great. And so each company with its own passion, its own initiative, its own ideas, competing with each other, but also in the broader market, will win more. And in fact, his conviction is playing out. The two fastest growing brands in the market are Ghirardelli and Lindt. We happen to be growing faster because we're better, but hey.
So do you share R&D, for example?
We do on some things. We share back office things. We don't have the same IT organization or things like that, but we have the same philosophies. And we're actually in the middle of next year going to open a Ghirardelli production line actually in their facility in New Hampshire. And why? Because we've outgrown, or we're in the process of outgrowing our factory in California, and logistically, it's a big country, and most of the people live east of the Mississippi. So we would like to have an East Coast production. So we're going to open it in their facility. Okay. So we'll really be brothers and sisters at that
absolutely.
point.
So big supply chain benefits to that.
Should be.
Also
yes.
capacity.
Exactly.
You had mentioned to me earlier that you make 60% of your production?
70% of the product. Okay. One of the great things about our company is we own every step of the production process. We buy cocoa beans from around the world, Ghana and West Africa, Ecuador and South America, Papua New Guinea and Southeast Asia, and we bring them to San Leandro, California, where our production facility is, and we literally own every step of the process. So what comes in the back door is raw materials. What goes out the side door is finished product. Right. And that's true for 70% of what we do. And then there are certain businesses that we have that we just don't have the capability. It's not a big enough business for us to buy an expensive machine, or we just don't have the. So what we do is we work with other co-manufacturers with their R&D, and we basically give them our recipe, and we ensure the quality, and that's about 30% of what we do.
Okay. Yeah. How do you set yourself apart from your competitors, aside from your family competitors?
I think we're premium product, and so we charge a premium price. The way that works in our business is price points matter. So when you walk into a CVS on the drag, is it still called the drag? Mm-hmm. Okay, the CVS on the drag. It was the drag when I was here. You walk into the CVS on the drag, and there's a difference between paying $4.99 for something and paying $5.49. Mm-hmm. So you're probably going to sell more at $4.99. We know this empirically. The data, we know it. You can buy a bag of Hershey Kisses for $4.99, and it's going to have 25 Hershey Kisses. You can buy a bag of Ghirardelli, and it's going to have 10 Ghirardelli squares. So we're affordable, mm-hmm. but we're premium. You get somehow less ounces or less pieces per money. It's worth it because of every step that we take along the way of production and owning each step, using the finest ingredients. For example, cocoa beans. We buy 22,000 tons of cocoa beans a year. We sample every batch that comes in, and we send 30% of those back to the marketplace because the quality simply isn't good enough for us. Right. Now, cocoa beans are not thrown away. Somebody then buys them on the open market and uses them. So we use the finest ingredients, and we have a proprietary process for how we make the chocolate. So that's how we set ourselves apart. Okay. We're going where the market is. We are where the market is going. Smaller quantities, better quality is where the market's going, and so I think we're set up very nicely for that.
Okay. And being in a food industry, you're obviously affected a lot by corporate social responsibility issues, and particularly in your industry by fair trade, GMO, all of that. Could you talk a little bit about how you think about that?
Sure. Cocoa beans are grown plus minus 10 degrees of the equator, right? So it's in a very few places in the world, West Africa and things like that. And a cocoa farm may be the size of the Graduate School of Business building. These are small farmers, not mechanized really at all. So it's really about farming in the early 1900s, maybe even the 1800s. And so it's our job, it's our best interest, it's our investment in the future to make sure that these farmers have a prosperous lifestyle. They can make money from being a cocoa bean farmer, and they can take some proceeds and put it in their pocket. They could take some proceeds and put it back into their farm. And so we work very hard on sustainability initiatives to make sure that we know where our cocoa beans are coming from, and we invest back in those communities and in those farms. And we have been in West Africa since 2008, and we are just starting this year in Ecuador, which is the second biggest growing region. So that's one area of corporate social responsibility. Another is we do a lot of business in San Francisco, California, where we were founded, and in Northern California, and we are very involved with Boys and Girls Club, local schools, just all kinds of initiatives that are really benefiting the cities and towns where we live and work. So we're doing a lot of things, and it's important. We talked about the proposition of getting talented people to come to work for you. This is actually an important part of them saying that's a company I want to work for. Yeah. This company demonstrates values that are consistent with mine, and I can take an afternoon off and go teach at the Boys and Girls Club if I want to, or I can do this and that, and that attracts people of a certain type to come to your company, and so it's important to have all of those kinds of missions.
Do you quantify the community involvement piece? Do you quantify and report that?
We don't per se. We track it internally. One thing, just to give you one example, San Leandro, which is where our factory is now, is kind of a lower income community of 80,000 people, and about 20% of the people who work in our factory employees live in San Leandro. It's huge. It's middle class, but it's lower middle class. What we have started to do, last year we started an internship program for college-age kids who went to San Leandro High School. We have now said, we got a pool of 20 and we hired 8 last year. We would like to, if you're interested in engineering or accounting or sales or marketing, and we've started this. And so last year we went from 8, and this year we'll go to 12. So we're doing things that just invest back into the community, and we get a lot of community energy from that. It's the right thing to do also.
Yeah. If you were getting ready to retire and you had a voice in picking your successor, what qualities would you specify that the company should be looking for?
It's a good question. I'm not ready to retire, but maybe no. But
it seemed like the best way to phrase it.
Yeah, no. I mean, rather than hit by a bus
exactly,
or something
yeah.
like that. Okay. So let's see. I think you have to have leadership skills and acumen, and part of it is. And by the way, I would say to everybody in this room, leadership is learned. Everybody can be a leader. Everybody can be a leader. If you don't feel like you have it, you can get it. You just have to work on it. And that's my story also. But I think you need to have confidence. You need to have leadership ability, the ability to bring people together. And then you need to have energy and external focus on the market and the ability to communicate. You need to be able to communicate well. Communication skills is another thing I would talk to you guys about. Learn how to write, learn how to speak, learn how to look at people directly, because people get trust from that, and they need that. The people that you work with need to see those things from you, whether it's your boss or the people who work for. These interpersonal kinds of things are vital. And so I think you need to have an emotional quotient, or EQ, a little bit along those lines. But I think you need leadership ability, you need energy, you need passion, you need the ability to communicate, those things. I have not said, by the way, financial ability or sales ability or marketing ability. You need to have know-how also, of course. But it's the things that separate are the things above know-how that are sort of skill related.
Speaking of sales ability, that's an area that, for the benefit of the McCombs students in the crowd, it's something that we have a course in it, but we don't have a major in sales or anything like that. Most business schools don't. And so I think there might be some less understanding about how that works in a company than about something like marketing, and why is it different from marketing. Would you be able to talk about that a little bit?
I was fortunate in being hired by Procter & Gamble, because this is one of the best training companies in the whole world. And selling consumer products, fast-moving consumer goods, sometimes called, is different than selling software, for sure. But there's a sales process that you go through in terms of how do you create a compelling presentation. There's a process of understanding what the customer needs and getting better at it. And the first guy I worked for was a guy named Mike Russell, who's still with Procter & Gamble and is an awesome guy. And their methodology was teaching, school a little bit. Like, you literally had to learn, like, what does our product cost and how much should it retail and how do you calculate margin and, like, the basics, right? And then you go in and you learn how to see a store and what's going on in the store, and then how do you frame your offer relative to what's going on in the store. And then you watch. So Mike would make the call, and then we'd come and sit after the call, and we'd say, all right, what worked, what didn't work, what do we try next time? And then he would let me do it, And so I think, and then he would watch while I'm in there trying to get some sales going or whatever, and then this process of just getting better and better along those lines. So selling is learning how to help the customer get what they need and what they want. And put your product in the place where that's got to be the one I need. Yep. I need to have that product in order for me to achieve my goals. And it probably isn't taught well enough. And fortunately, I landed with a good training company. And if you're going to be in sales, I would get with a good training company.
Yeah. Good. What's the best advice you were ever given?
I'll give you two things. First is a little. When I left Procter & Gamble, I joined the Clorox company, and the Clorox company had a leader at the time named Craig Sullivan. Craig Sullivan was also a sales guy who became CEO, and Craig said he had a leadership group, which is about 50 people, VPs and directors. And I remember one time we were at a retreat, and he said, we were talking about something very challenging. And he said, leaders need to have courage and to have integrity. And you have to have integrity because people are going to they're going to need to follow you. You need to have people trust you that they can follow where you're going. And then you need courage, because you're going to have to do some challenging things along the way. So Craig Sullivan's advice was leaders need courage and integrity. And it was one of those lightning bolt moments for me as I was developing my own leadership style, my own leadership skills. It was like, hey, I need to make sure that I'm building in integrity and courage into my portfolio. So that was one. Then my mom used to say, do your best. And I say it to my kids all the time. And, do your best. And why? Because I don't know about you, but if you feel like, I just kind of went through the motions on that one, sometimes you walk away going, I don't feel very good about myself on that one. And rather than beat yourself up or whatever, just do your best. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Go on. But if you don't do your best, then you may somehow have missed an opportunity or somehow not walk away with the best feeling. And we don't need that. Right?
As you translate those kinds of things into hiring or evaluation of performance of the people who work for you, how do you do that? How do you incorporate that?
It's a good question. What I learned about hiring, I learned from Procter & Gamble. I learned from the Clorox company. I did a lot of interviewing on behalf of Procter & Gamble, some of that at McCombs, but where I really had to hire for my own team was at Clorox company. And basically, I start with, does this person have know-how? I'm hiring a salesperson or a marketing person. Can they do this job? And then I get to other skills, like can they work with other people effectively? Can they communicate? What kind of energy do they have? I often just have conversations like you're having with me, and I get a sense for, they're not really deep in their business knowledge of their own business. Is that because they don't care about it, or what is it? So you really have to have a sense for, when I hire, I can work with this person. They have know-how, and they have somehow shared values to what I think that we can move forward. And that's what I look for. Advice, free, take it or leave it. If you don't know whether you should hire a person, don't hire them. Okay? There have been times where I have said, I'm going to take another look at that person because there are some things I like and some things maybe I'm unsure of, so I'm going to give them another shot.
Okay.
One of the people I work with today has worked for me now 3 times. And the first time, I was like, no, I'm not hiring you. He called me and said, why aren't you hiring me? And I said, I have these concerns. He's like, I need to interview with you again then. So and now he's worked for me 3 times, so we actually do have all these things in common, or, we have shared values. We're totally different people, but we have shared values. We work together very well. But generally, I would say my rule is, if I am unclear whether I should hire you, I'm not hiring you. So then I'm very clear. And that's the question I say to people when we're around roundtable. We have a process at Ghirardelli. Very hard to get hired by our company. Very hard. We have a process where multiple people, multiple levels will interview you. We want you to have a good sense for who we are. So if you're hiring for a marketing job, you'll see the marketing person, the boss, the VP of marketing, some salespeople, finance person, maybe an operations person who does project management. We want you to have a really clear understanding of the job and the people and the culture. Likewise, we are getting a multifaceted view of who you are. And when we go through these things and we're evaluating, and it's quantitative and it's, it's sharp. If it's not clear, if the hiring manager isn't clear, then I step in. Okay, not hiring. And so I don't mean to sound, frightening to you, but it's just more, you all will be in a position where you have to staff your own teams someday, and it's important for you to know that if you're not clear in your tummy or in your head whether you should, don't.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh, you've mentioned know-how a couple of times.
Yeah.
I'll finish with this, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the floor. That was my signal, I think. But I got to get one more in. You've mentioned this idea of know-how. Can you say a little bit more for the benefit of the students, what that means? What are you looking for?
Sure. A marketer needs to know in fast-moving consumer goods, product, price, promotion, placement. Marketers need to know these things. And in the chocolate category, what are the cues that are making your product attractive? What are the cues that are going to make you stand out and visible at the point of sale? So that's marketing know-how. Okay. And there are obviously other things, but that's really how you get the consumer motivated. What's your brand? How do you create brand equity? How do you communicate it through product visuals or through other kinds of things? This is marketing know-how. Operations know-how. I need to put a $40 million machine in a room that's this size, and it needs to do X amount of tons per year. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to do that, but I know that we need people who know how to do that, and so we have to find people with that engineering, ability, and so it's that kind of deep knowledge, technical, what I call technical knowledge in your field. That's know-how.
All right. Good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, then let me open it with that to the floor. There's a microphone here, and feel free to line up with your questions. That's always hard to get started here, and then we always have people waiting at the end, so this is your chance.
Hi, thanks for coming. My question was, since you're a McCombs grad, maybe what is one lesson that you learned from McCombs, or something that you've taken with you from McCombs that helped you in your career?
I had a great education at McCombs. I studied finance, actually, and I studied finance in sort of an unusual decision-making, which is I knew that I didn't want to be a finance major. I knew, actually, that I wanted to go into sales, but I knew somehow inherently, I knew intuitively that finance would help me in my career. And now I'm telling you, I'm up to my elbows in P&Ls and balance sheets and things like that. So the basics that I got at McCombs, I still use in those kinds of things. Now I have a CFO and all these other kinds of things, but I still use these things. So I got a great education, super passionate, capable professors, very talented students who stretched me also. Yeah, so I would say that what I learned in the basics of finance, I use today.
It's good to know. Make sure to pay attention.
Good luck. Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Okay, well, no question this time. So I'm an accounting major here at UT, and my name is Jamal. And this question, I think, comes up quite a bit, but I think it'd be good for all of us to hear. What are your thoughts on Charlie Strong?
Charlie Strong. So first, let me say I would like him to do better in his record than he did last year. I'm very I was a big Mac Brown fan, but sometimes when you have been leading a big organization like he has for 15, 16 years, it's time for a change. I'm happy with Charlie Strong, and I can't wait for him to have his own recruits running his offense and his defense. Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yep. Good football. Yeah.
Hi, my name is David Nielsen. Thanks for coming today. My question was, are there any sort of traditions that are passed down in a 163-year-old company that would be sort of unique to it, or any sort of legacies that are handed down that you know of?
Thank you, David. I am in touch with Domingo Ghirardelli's relatives, and it's funny. One of them I had coffee with in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, and I invited him and some of his other Ghirardellians to come. Ghirardellis, I guess, is probably the better pronunciation, huh? I invited them to come and tour our factory, and they are. They're going to come in the fall. So it's just an interesting for me opportunity to just connect the present with the future or the past, and these folks haven't been involved in managing the company for 60 years, but they're very proud of what we're doing, and I like to keep that going. One thing I will also say, which is a great thing about our company, we have a place called Ghirardelli Square in San Francisco, and it's where our company was run for 75 years, and we have a chocolate shop and soda fountain there in Ghirardelli Square. And there's amazing how many people here have been to Ghirardelli Square? Wow, fantastic. It's amazing how many people come to me and say, do you know, I was on my honeymoon and I went to Ghirardelli Square on my honeymoon. Or we had a family tradition, which was when I got a good report card, I would go to Ghirardelli Square. And so there's just enormous nostalgia and positive, emotional connection memories to our brand and people's lives at certain point along the way. And this is something that's really powerful. And we're trying to build on that. So maybe a different way of answering your question. So.
Yeah, thanks for the chocolate.
Thank you, yeah. Did you get the chocolate, David, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, great, super.
Hi, my question to you is that you mentioned that over the years developing trust and integrity with the people you work with is like a key skill set for leadership. So I guess like my question is like, how did you, I guess, get people to trust and ultimately believe in your ideas and ultimately progress?
I think you know, I will answer you two ways. First thing is you do what you say you're going to do, and when you do that often enough, people say, okay, this gentleman is what he says he is. He's going to do what he says he's going to do. I think that's number one. Number two is the company is bigger than anybody, and you have to put the company before yourself. And when people see that you can do that, then they also begin to see a little bit of who you are and how you're wired. And so I think it's those two things these are hard jobs. If you're the vice president of sales or the vice president of marketing, and you have to sometimes take that big price increase or that big something to the customer, and you have to sell it as hard as you can, even though you don't want to, even though it's hard, even though the customer's not going to be happy. And you know, as head of sales, we were at a certain point in our development where we had to make hard choices, and I had to take it on and make it through on behalf of the whole company. I think those kinds of things just give people a sense of this guy isn't going to shy away from the tough things. But you know, we also are very selective in our hiring, right? So we hire people, and I think so. The broader company feels the same way about each other, about our colleagues. And one of the things that we communicate very clearly is in any role that you're in, you are both a customer and a supplier. So you have to ask the people who need something from you, as your supplier, what are you looking for from me so I can meet those expectations? And then you turn to somebody else and you say, as your customer, let me tell you what I'm looking for from you. And I have those relationships with the people who work for me. What do you need from me? Here's what I need from you. And then we hold each other accountable to that. And so, and that's how it works. And it ultimately feels a little structured in the beginning, but then it just becomes part of how you communicate. Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Thompson. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Miriam, and in one of my classes we talk a lot about supply chains in developing countries. So if you have any experience, kind of, you mentioned you're almost completely vertically integrated, what it's like working in Ecuador or any of the West African countries you were talking about?
I don't have any international experience, I'm sorry, but I have a lot of domestic experience. And so, you know, we have, so I'm not sure if there's something specific.
No, more like, has there ever been kind of like a contractual issue when you're dealing with the suppliers from that side?
Mm-hmm. Yes. If you, let me take another drink of water, Miriam. No, I think, you know, the chocolate business is very seasonal, right? And in the fourth quarter of the year, you have Halloween, which we don't really participate in, and then you have Christmas. And Christmas, we're very big in. We're one of the leaders in Christmas. And you basically sell Christmas. 2015 was sold in December of 2014. So you don't even know what your results are going to be before you're actually presenting with the customer. Why? Because, you know, Walmart's got a plan for 3,700 stores, and Target has to plan for 1,700, and Walgreens 8,000, et cetera. So it takes a lot of, you know, time to get all of these things going. And so we often source supplies like packaging and things from other countries, and if we don't give them quite the lead time, or, you know, we've been let down on packaging, let me say it that way. It's never been necessarily about cocoa beans or cocoa butter or milk powder or sugar or anything like that, but it is oftentimes packaging that comes from different parts of the world. And what happens is those packages are put on a ship, and those ship is sold around, sailed around the world. And just last year, we had a longshoreman strike in the port of Long Beach, California. So we had packages, they were there, and we had product, and it was there, but the two couldn't meet because the packages were on a ship in Long Beach. That's another issue. The supply chain and working effectively is really critical for companies like ours and our customers to be successful.
Can I insert a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
There's got to be somebody in your company saying, why are we not in Halloween?
Yes. Halloween is, and yes, it's me. No, Halloween is about you giving chocolate to kids you don't really know. And so most kids are, okay, some of them. Okay, I'm cutting to the chase here. Okay, this is not the marketing spiel on it. But I mean, if you're giving chocolate to your mom or your wife or something like that, you're giving the best, right? But if somebody's coming around the door and they're ringing the door and they could live in the next neighborhood or 10 streets over, you don't really know them, they've got a mask on, you're not sure. You're just you're throwing like a Snickers bar in or something like that, and so it's actually hard to get adults to buy great chocolate for the trick-or-treaters.
Did you hear that rumble? They think Snickers is a premium chocolate.
I know. Let me tell you, there's something better out there.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
My name's Matt. I'm a big fan of the peppermint bark, but my question was kind of, one of the trends in the United States right now is kind of growing to be more fit, eating healthier foods. So how has that affected the chocolate industry, and how has Ghirardelli specifically tried to adjust to that trend?
Great. Thanks, Matt. And I appreciate your love and support of peppermint bark. We have a new product coming out for you this year on peppermint bark. So, no, I think it's a good question. First of all, we're a premium product company. We don't talk about health, really. We talk about enjoying. And so we want you to be here, Matt, so be healthy. But one thing, a Ghirardelli square is individually wrapped. And that alone is portion control right there. And each square is 70 calories. So it's not a lot, actually. And the average consumer, just by the way, kind of category knowledge, chocolate is less than 2% of an adult's daily calorie intake. So it's a really modest portion, and it's really a celebration. Chocolate is something that you enjoy. It's good for you. All that said, we're not going to talk about health. We're going to talk about goodness and feeling good and things like that. But we are working on making sure that, as we do with cocoa beans and everything that we do, we're making sure that the ingredients that we put into our chocolate are the best. And that will continue to be a focus. And what the best means with consumers is actually evolving. And so there's a lot going on relative to organic. There's a lot going on relative to genetically modified and things like that. And so we're working very hard on solutions, not organic, but genetically modified for sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Yushane, and I know most of the cocoa comes from West Africa.
Yeah.
And I was wondering what Ghirardelli has done there in terms of working conditions specifically, and making sure, like you said, you make sure the farmers are in good condition, getting good pay.
Yeah, appreciate that. So by far the biggest cocoa growing country in the world is Ivory Coast. And we do not buy any cocoa beans from the Ivory Coast. Why? Because very little of the money goes to the farmers in the Ivory Coast. They go to the government. And so what happens over time is it's not good for the farmers, and ultimately the quality of the cocoa bean is not as good as it is in one country. The next country next door is Ghana, and so we purchase all of our West African beans from Ghana. Ghana has a really modernized sort of cocoa industry, and they want the whole supply chain to prosper in Ghana, including the farmer. So that's number one. We don't buy from Ivory Coast. We buy from Ghana because the Ghanese system works for everybody. And ultimately, the result of that is better quality cocoa beans, okay, and better, healthier farms. Now, separately from that, we work with a company. We basically want to know who our farmers are and in what communities they live. and we put money back specifically into those farms and those communities. And the money could go to farming techniques, how to be a better farmer, how to use fertilizer better, or it could go into business techniques, how to get better pricing for the cocoa beans that you do, or it could go to any kind of number of things. So we also buy mosquito nets. We also work on wells. We also work on internet connectivity. We also work on building schools in these communities that we build farms. How do we do that? A ton of cocoa beans today on the world market, and you can buy it just like corn or soy or whatever, costs about $2,700 per ton, metric ton. We pay around $2,900, and we take that $200 and locally it's sourced into a separate company that works directly with the farming communities. That's how we do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Dylan Atkins. So when I got here, I was really, really impressed by, actually I was just really excited about all the chocolate. And it made me think, you're the CEO of a chocolate company. Yeah. How often do you eat your chocolate? And if so, what is your favorite flavor?
I eat my chocolate every day. What's great about our company is, the chocolate's free. That's the great thing. So on my desk is a big glass bowl of the big Ghirardelli squares, and on my table where I take meetings is a small bowl of the minis, which you guys have back there. And depending upon the time of year, you'll get some peppermint bark, or you'll get some other things, and seasonal flavors. And we have a culture. The people in our company are passionate about not only our brand, Ghirardelli, but also what we do and how we do it. And so people just love the chocolate. So my favorite flavor is milk and caramel. That's our hero. And we do milk and caramel better than anybody. And so if you don't if it's too sweet for you, then we have a really overdeveloped market share in dark chocolate. And dark chocolate is where a company like ours really demonstrates their competence, because it's really hard to make quality dark chocolate, right? Because if you're buying a 72% cacao, that's 72% cocoa, 28%, 28% sugar, okay? And so to make that ratio feel and taste really super good, you have to really have a good competence. So if I weren't eating milk and caramel, I would eat a 72% Ghirardelli square. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate Toby. I just want to thank you for coming. But I've actually recently heard that the cocoa plants have become diminished, and that possibly by the year 2020 that we will have exhausted the cocoa plants. And I'm a big chocolate lover, so that kind of concerns me. I just want to know if that's true, and what strategies your company has taken to compensate for that and your competitors.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. I think what I'll first say is in developing parts of the world, India and China, they don't really have a chocolate history per se, and it's just developing. Chocolate companies are moving into India and China because the population is so big, and so they're introducing, of course they've always had it, but it's not as big and thriving and innovative a market as in the US. So they're just bringing that. And these new huge populations are actually what's putting a challenge on the existing resources, and that's why there's this concern about 2020. I don't believe it. And what literally every chocolate company in the world is doing is investing in farms and farming techniques and things like that in places like Ecuador and Central and South America and West Africa and Southeast Asia. So we are all in this together. It's the future. We've been handed this opportunity after, for me, 163 years, go make this into something even better. Same with the Mars company, the Hershey company, the Nestle company. We're all invested in making sure that it's healthy, sustainable into the future. And so, we're working very hard on it. And we're making progress, but I don't think 2020 is a day at which we have to start eating sugar candy or something terrible like that, right? Or apples, for God's sake.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for last two questions here, okay?
Hello, I'm Bernardo. I'm from Ecuador. So
Bernardo,
all right.
Yes.
I'd like to, you're welcome for our cocoa bean. would like to just ask, what are your tasks as a CEO of such a big company as Ghirardelli?
The number one thing I'm responsible for basically two things. Making sure our company is organized and prepared to meet our financial commitments. Because our parent company and all the companies within our group, our family of companies, they're relying on us to hit our commitments. Within the Lindt group of companies, and probably everybody's heard of the Lindt brand, right? They do a really nice job. And within the Lindt group, there are 22 companies, and we're the second largest company within that group. So all of our other companies in that group are looking for us to be successful. They need us to be successful for the group to be successful. So we have to go out and grow our business, grow our profits, that kind of thing. That's number one. Number two is I have to nurture and grow the brand. And I can't grow my business at the expense of my brand. And I can't be so protective of my brand that I'm afraid to take risks on my business. So I have to bring together a group of people. And I say I don't mean to say I. We, all doing it together. We have this balance. We're building our brand while we're building our business. And I think that's what we have been able to do these last few years, and it's really, the business has taken off. So thank you, Bernardo, for your cocoa beans. Yes.
Thank you for being here. Would you say that women are beginning to challenge traditionally male roles within Ghirardelli?
Getting there, yes. On my management team, we have two vice presidents who are women. One is our head of marketing, and one is our head of HR. I would think that traditionally HR has been, sort of female, at least in our company. But we're starting to see more in engineering. We're starting to see more in operations. We're starting to see more in sales. And it's great. And so I think we're making progress. Yeah.
What about Clorox?
Clorox company, it's been 11 years since I've been there, so I can't speak. Now, Clorox does a great job on diversity, I would say. So, and I still know well some of the people who are in leadership roles at Clorox. So, they're a super company. Same with Procter & Gamble. I'm fortunate I've worked for great companies. And so I think in these places, you're going to see diversity celebrated, actually.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for really good questions. Thank you so much, Marty.
Hey,
that
my
was really
pleasure. That was
interesting.
awesome.
Appreciate it. Now, turn it back over to Mandy.
Thank you very much, Dean Platt and Mr. Thompson. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to speak with our students. I know that we will be able to take your lessons and apply them to our own lives. As a token of our appreciation, the Undergraduate Business Council would like to present Mr. Thompson with his personalized Stetson cowboy hat in recognition and participation in our program.
Wow. Black hat, fantastic. Sure, thank you very much. Excuse me, Dean, I apologize. Thank you.